Hello, welcome everybody. I'm Caio. I'm speaking to you from São Paulo, Brazil. Hello, Javier. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Caio. Hi,
Thank you.
everyone.
Hi, everyone. So I would like to welcome everybody. I'm speaking from São Paulo, Brazil. My name is Caio Calado. I am the local program manager for the Reactor. I am responsible for the local content and also to help to connect the Brazilian community with the global community, Brazilian and Argentina and Latin America community, right, Javier?
Yeah, absolutely.
So as I was saying to Javier, today I'm really excited because we are live from São Paulo, but Javier is in Argentina and we are live to the other reactors around the world too. So for those who doesn't know, Reactor is a global community. We have more than 14 reactors places around the world. The idea is basically to connect with local communities and also to help everyone to get empowered by new technologies and new things in the tech world. Every week we promote different events, workshops, presentations, panels, or I don't know, conversations with folks in the industry. And everything that we do, we would like to help everyone to learn more about anything that would be helpful for the professional or also personal growth. Every event that we do, every time we like to just run through our code of conduct. Microsoft is dedicated to empower everyone in every organization on the planet to achieve more. That, of course, includes the Reactors events. So we try to provide respectful, friendly, professional experiences for everyone, regardless of the gender, sexual orientation, physical appearance, disability, age, race, or religion. So we do not tolerate any behavior that is harassing or degrading to any individual in any form. So we want to welcome everybody and to try to create like a friendly space so anyone can be part of it and also to share anything. If you one day, if you find that anyone here said something wrong or something that you didn't appreciate it, you can go to our website, microsoftreactor.com, and look for our code of conduct. Over there, you're going to find like a trust form that you can report whatever you find you didn't like it. If anything, I'm here to help you if you need any assistance. So before we start and Javier starts to give his presentation, I would like to just share 2 guidelines with you. Basically, if you have any questions or would like to share any comments, please just use the live chat. You can leave a comment or just say whatever you're thinking about the presentation. At any time, we are going to answer, or at least in the end of the event, we're going to have a moment for that. Try to answer as much questions or comments that we see in the live chat. And also be careful with the comments that you leave in the comment sections. This is a live recorded event. So we want to try to make the things cool and respectful to everyone, but also don't share sensitive information because it's going to be here, okay? So today, the agenda is basically, we're going to have a presentation. Javier here is going to talk about, I will tell in a moment what he's going to talk, but basically, Javier is going to give a presentation, and in the end, we're going to have a Q&A section between us and you that is watching us live. Okay? So I guess this is it. Javier, I'm adding your slides here. You're going to talk about new features in SQL Server 2019. Before you do, I don't know if you're going to do that, but are you going to would like to present yourself?
Yeah. I have one slide to present myself, which is actually here. Well, the topic is already set. We're gonna be talking about all the new features regarding to SQL Server 2019. So that's the topic. And here is a little bit about myself. My name is Javier Villegas. I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I work as a global DBA and design coordinator at Mediterranean Shipping Company for the last almost 15 years. I'm been involved with SQL Server since the very early versions, 6.0, 6.5. I don't even remember how many years back. My focus area is mainly on performance tuning, high availability, and disaster recovery. I am a Microsoft MVP in the data platform category since 2016, and also a technical speaker. I like to present different topics related to data platform for a bunch of events, mainly from the events related to the PASS community, right? So, which I am member of our local group here in Argentina, SQL Argentina, which is also part of the PASS community. On the left side of the screen, there is my contact information, my email address, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I always like to get in touch with people and discuss about this presentation or anything that we can discuss technically speaking. So let's start with the presentation. This is a little bit about the evolution of SQL Server. So how Microsoft is giving us all this path and this growth to the initial version of SQL Server to where we are today, right? So, and this journey has started way back than SQL Server 2008 or 2008 R2 as presented in this slide. But I would say that starting on SQL Server 2012 is where Microsoft has, bet a bunch of some of the pillars that we're going to be discussing today. Initially in 2012, there were this first introduction of always on or availability groups, this technique to provide high availability and disaster recovery. So this way, be able to support any kind of workload, especially business critical and decision maker process on transactional environments with a good high availability and disaster recovery solutions. Also, the first introduction of in-memory technology and the cloud. That was the first, let's say, approach to this cloud technology. In 2014, there was a kind of a huge change in terms of internally in SQL Server for the database engine in the query processing, right? Microsoft has changed, and we're going to go through that in the presentation, has changed the cardinal estimator, how the SQL engine come up with different execution plans, etc., and they made a huge change. Then in 2016, which was the first, how I like to call it, modern version of SQL Server, they start betting in different areas. For example, one of the biggest problems that we see with SQL Server over the years and the different versions was basically related to performance stability. Right? We know that SQL Server can come up with a plan for a particular store procedure, query, report, whatever, and then it use it and keep it on cache, right? And reuse it over time. And then for some reason, it can change that plan, and it not sometimes is better than the one that was using. And there are many reasons why a plan can change, right? So we can have this procedure that normally runs for 1-2 minutes, and suddenly, without any code change, it can start taking hours, right? So, and that was one of the biggest problem that we see. Not the server running, let's say, at high peak of CPU usage or performance issues, but this big problem with the plan variation. Right, and with 2016, Microsoft started addressing that particular problem. right? Also, one of the important things that Microsoft gave us in 2016 was the possibility of working with machine learning within the database engine. What does it mean? We are able, in 2016, to use the R language, right, to manipulate data within our SQL Server. So since then, we don't have to, let's say, extract and move the data out to another system to do machine learning and then put it back. No. Since 2016, we are able to work it directly on the database engine. So this was really, really huge. And in terms of the performance, as I said, that problem related to the plan variation, they introduced this feature called query store, right? That we're going to go through the presentation and discuss what it is, but it was the first approach to address that problem with the performance variation. In 2017, right, Microsoft introduced something that was huge, actually, which was the possibility of running SQL Server not only on Windows Server, right, but also in the major Linux distribution, right? This was a good thing. Was actually a game changer, right? Because now we have possibility of running SQL Server on another OSs that before it was impossible and even hard to imagine. In that area related to performance, they kept adding additional stuff to this layer of query store to make more improvement on, stabilizing executions and make this goal, which is actually don't have many variations over time. Doesn't matter if the server is really busy or idle, right? But be predictive with timings and execution and resource usage, right? In SQL Server 2019, right? I forgot to mention that in 2017, at the top of the R language, they also added the possibility to manage the data using Python, another great thing, right? In 2019, the biggest feature is the possibility of running this big data cluster, which basically allow us to do some sort of data virtualization, right? Be able to have SQL Server at the center of the star and communicate with different database engines, relational or non-relational, right? And also they added the possibility of using Java as an external program also to handle the data, right? So those are really, really important things. And in that way, they were also adding additional points to make mature all the existing features to accomplish good performance, stable performance, and high availability, and of course, security, right? So let's move on. And I can say that today, SQL Server runs kind of everywhere, right? And why do I say it so? Initially, we had the possibility, as many years back, to run SQL Server in our bare metal hardware in our data center, Windows Server, and SQL, right? As I mentioned, started 2017, we also had the possibility of running SQL Server on the major Linux distribution. Additionally, right, we also have the possibility of running SQL Server in containers, right? Using, for example, the Docker engine to run these lightweight containers. In addition to that, we are also able to run SQL Server containers in Kubernetes, right? This way, we can scale those containers and orchestrate different environment using the Kubernetes technology. And all this is kind of, let's say, on-premise, right? Then we jump to the cloud. And if we go to the cloud, we have the possibility, if we focus on Azure, right, to have SQL Server as an infrastructure as a service, right, running on virtual machines, right? So, and not only Windows, but also Linux, right? In addition to that, Microsoft gives us the possibility of running two flavors of SQL Server as a managed service, right? This gives us the possibility of just having an endpoint for SQL Server, and we don't have to worry about the infrastructure, the networking, the patching, the high availability, the backups, right? So we have SQL as a service. The first option, or the first flavor, as I like to say, is SQL Server Managed Instance, which give us nearly 100% compatibility with what we have in SQL Server on-prem. We also have this other option called Azure SQL Database, which is a single database in Azure, which also provide high compatibility with SQL Server, but it's not, exactly like the SQL Server we know. There are several things, but at the end of the day, it's another option that we have as a SQL Server managed service, right? And finally, which is still in preview, Microsoft give us the possibility of running SQL servers on ARM devices, right? So what they call SQL Server Edge. So we can run SQL Server on an ARM device, for example, a Raspberry Pi, in where, of course, we won't host there our mission-critical decision-making transactional environment, but for certain environment, for Edge, right, for capture, let's say, events or data at the edge, and then, processing on these ARM devices is a really good option. So this is still in preview, and it's also another possibility we have. So as I said, right, we have many options to run SQL Server today, right? And from the marketing perspective, right, let's cover this topic quickly, right? So for this big data cluster and data virtualization option, Microsoft gave us the possibility of having SQL Server running along with Spark, right? This way, we can integrate SQL Server with big data using Spark, right? Additionally, now we have a choice of platform, right? Windows, Linux, Docker, and Kubernetes. And also we have different possibilities of running and accessing the data. For example, T-SQL since day one, and also R, Python, and Java. In terms of performance, Microsoft SQL Server is ranked as one of the best transactional engines, right? Related to security, SQL Server is the most secure environment with the least amount of vulnerabilities found for 9 years in a row, right? And also, giving us another tools for the BI purposes and reporting purposes at the top of this. And all this running from edge to a hybrid environment up to, the public cloud. So with SQL Server 2019, we would like to, let's say, focus on different challenges that we may find, right? For example, if we need to scale our SQL Server operation, always having SQL at the center of the star, right? We have this big data cluster, right? In where from SQL Server, we can go and access any data source, right? It could be Oracle, Teradata, but also can be Cosmos DB, MongoDB, right? So from this technology that is called Polybase, right? We can have, data virtualization, so we can see external data from any of the sources that I just mentioned, right, as a SQL table, and then we can, use it for our internal processes, right? one more time, choice in the platform that we can use, right? Building machine learning, right? Now, again, we don't have to extract or move the data from our SQL Server to another system, because now we can work with R, Python, and Java locally on SQL Server. And then this concept that actually I love it, right, which is this intelligent performance, right? Remember that problem that I mentioned about the those plans that are changing the execution plan over time and giving us troubles. We're gonna go through deeper with that. All this, right, in a fully secure environment from the application and all the way through the database engine, right? So there are different techniques to encrypt, communication, client connection, and the data within the database, right? And all this in a mission-critical environment with high availability, disaster recovery, and this new feature that we're going to cover, which is called accelerated database recovery. That is really helpful for some scenarios. We're going to cover that later. This is a big picture of how SQL Server Big Data Cluster works, right? All the different components, right? Again, having SQL Server at the center of the star, being able, using Spark, right, to connect to any other data source. So let's go to discover all the foundations that are the pillars of SQL Server modern platform, especially 2019, right? In the area of intelligent performance, we have, as I said, this query store feature introduced back in 2016, which is basically the possibility of having, I like to call it a flight recorder, right? So you enable query store on a user database, and what is going to happen underneath is that the SQL Server engine will capture all the runtime statistics, right? As well as, plan changes, variations, resource usage, etc., etc., etc. So every single statement running on my database will be recorded in this query store repository, right? So why is this useful? For example, from Management Studio, we have the possibility of having this dashboard to see the query store and easily identify those resources that have suffered some regression. For example, we can easily identify the top 25 queries, procedure, reports that have some variation over time, right? And with that, we point that particular resource, right? And we see, for example, how the execution and the resource usage has been changing over time. And eventually, if we need to, we have the possibility as administrators to manually force one of the previous execution plans, right, to a particular procedure. And with that, we tell SQL, hey, from now on, since the plan that you are using is not good enough because it, for example, is taking too long, right, just use the one that I force you, right? So from that point onward, it's going to use another plan that it has from the past, right? So this is a technique to start mitigating those variations in the execution plan. Right? So definitely was a huge deal back in 2016, and now also using 2019. At the top of Query Store in SQL Server 2017, Microsoft added an additional layer called adaptive query processing. Automatic tuning. So what is that? Based on Query Store, right, we said that if SQL has suffered some regression, we're going to be capturing this through Query Store, right? And from this dashboard, we as DBA have the possibility of manually forcing one of the previous plans. But what's happened if this regression happens at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning and we get into the office at 8 a.m.? Right? We have this 4 or 5 hours windows in where the performance is not good. So in 2017, with this automatic tuning, right, we have the possibility of saying, hey, at the top of Query Store, enable this feature. So if you identify one statement, procedure that is running and has changed the execution plan, and the current one is not, let's say, better than the previous one, we can say, hey, use the previous one automatically, right? And with that, with no user or administrator intervention, automatically goes back to the previous plan. That's going to solve the problem that if the regression happens at 3 a.m. in the morning, automatically it's going to address and force the last known good execution plan without any user intervention. So we don't have to be in front of the Query Store dashboard to manually do anything. Right? It's going to happen automatically. So yes, another huge deal. At the top of that, right, as another mechanism to improve performance, Microsoft has come with this adaptive query processing in 2017 that later was renamed as intelligent query processing, right? This is basically to address some of the problems that we've been seeing also with query execution or with planned cache. For example, when SQL Server come up with a plan, right, that plan is static. So let's say that for some reason, the plan say, hey, I need to get 100 megabytes from the memory, right, in order to execute this query, right? So let's say that when you get that plan, it's going to be stored in cache. So every time that we want to execute the same query, right, it's going to go to the plan cache and use that one. And we just said that it's going to get 100 megabytes of memory. But what happened if instead of using 100 megabytes, it has to use only 1 megabyte? It's going to be wasting a lot of memory. You can tell me, okay, but it's only one thing, so it's not a big deal. But what happens if you are running that particular procedure, 100 times per minute? Right? You are not using the memory in the right way, so you're going to be not using and definitely having a bottleneck in terms of memory usage. And what's happened if it is the other way around? We request 100 megabyte and we have it on the plan, but then in subsequent execution, it's going to request to use 200, right? Instead of using the memory that is granted, it's going to go to the TempDB to use it as an external repository to supply that problem with the memory. So with this adaptive query processing, intelligent query processing feature, what Microsoft has is now the possibility of having the plan cache having feedback, right? What does it mean? So let's say that the first time that we compile the plan is requesting 100 megabytes, right? Then the next execution is saying, hey, I'm using only 1 megabyte, so I'm not using all the things that I have requested. So what it's doing is automatically on the fly adjusting the memory grants on the plan, so using the resources in a better way. And this is only one example, right? Because there are in many other areas that Microsoft has adapted this query plan feedbacks to have the plans in an optimal way, right? So to be, some feedback from the execution and the runs and the statistics, right? So to adjust and be more, optimal for upcoming execution. In terms of security, as I mentioned, dynamic data masking is one of the features that allow you to, let's say, obfuscate some of the data, so you don't present all the real data that you have, and that could be, for several regulations like GDPR, etc. Right? Then, in terms of mission critical, we're going to be talking about some of the features. In particular, one that I like a lot as a DBA, which is all the options related to resumable index maintenance, to do index rebuild or index creation. Right. So let's dig a little bit more into these features. I mentioned, in the intelligent query processing option, right, which is all this umbrella to get, the feedback directly from the execution plan. We have many options. If you see this slide, there are like two sets of them. The ones that are in regular letters are the ones starting in 2017, and the ones that are bold are the superset coming in 2019, right? And those are all the different options that intelligent query processing is addressing today to adjust the plans. For example, ones that I like a lot is this concept of scalar UDF inlining. We know that one of the most complex scalar functions, right? In where, for example, we encapsulate a lot of business logic within one function that, the end result is an integer value, right? So developers get creative and put a lot of logic there, and then that function, you can put it in a select statement, or even worse, in a predicate under the where clause. SQL Server was never doing good in that area, right? And when SQL was trying to come up with an estimate and to get the execution plan, they were considering that whatever is coming in this scalar UTF, right, is kind of with zero weight or near zero weight. So it doesn't matter what is there. So I will consider that it will always be really light, right? But as I said, it's not always the case. So this is one of the biggest problems. Now, with this technology, scalar UDF inlining within intelligent query processing, IQP, right? Microsoft has addressed that problem in different ways. Also, the memory grant feedback, as I mentioned earlier, right, for the possibility of adjusting the memory grants in one way or the other. And the other one that I like a lot is the adaptive choice, right? Because when you come up with an execution plan, let's say the first time that you come up with, based on the SQL statistics, it's going to say, hey, let's going to use, for example, this type of showing, right? And then, it's going to keep using it over time, right? But, depend on the amount of row that every branch of the merge is gonna return. You can have, maybe other choices of different showings, right? So with adaptive choice, we're going to see that depending on the amount of rows that are returning from each of the branches of the join, right, we can choose one type or the other and result better performance. Right? We also see in the slide here at the bottom this TempDB. It just runs faster. Right? We're going to cover that later with the demo, but believe me, it's one of the biggest features in SQL Server 2019. Right? So the challenge again is be proactive and in terms of performance, don't babysit the SQL Server as administrator and have all these possibilities of doing query store, automatic query tuning, and intelligent query processing to have the goal of having a stable execution. Right? So How do we use all these features for example, for intelligent query processing, right? The only thing we have to do is change the database compatibility level, right, to use 150. And with that, by default, it's going to start using all these features, right? Nothing else. We can, even use earlier compatibility level like 140 for 2017 or 130 for 2016 if we don't want to use any of these particular features. But just changing the compatibility level in that particular moment, we are just using all those new features. Another feature that I like a lot, actually, is this concept of lightweight query profiling, right? So let's picture this situation. Let's say that you have a report that is going to management, right? And normally takes 30 minutes. One day you get into the office and you get that phone call that is saying, hey, this report that I normally get it in the middle of the night, I still don't get it. And you notice that it is still running. So how do you troubleshoot that? Basically, you check and you see that the process is still going on. But till now, you don't have the possibility of seeing the execution progress, right? You don't know if it is at 10% of the execution, 50 or 90, right? So knowing that, you can take decisions. For example, if it is about to finish like in 90%, most probably you're going to wait until it finishes. But maybe if it is at 10%, 20%, you probably take another action, like, for example, kill the session, recompile the process, do some sort of troubleshooting, and run it again. So in SQL Server 2019, you have this option enabled by default. You can check for every single statement that is running against your SQL Server, right, in a lightweight mode, the estimated query progress. So for every single procedure, you can see if it is 10%, 15, 50, or 99, right? And that is great. So this is a feature in SQL Server 2019. One of the good things that Microsoft give us this time is that these cool features that we have, they are also enabling in a previous version of SQL Server, like 16 and 17. The only difference is that they are not enabled by default. We have to enable them using a trace flag. In this case, the trace flag 7412, right? So this is something also good, right? In 2019, it's enabled by default. In 2016 and 17, we have to enable it with this trace flag. Then we have this concept of database scope configuration. We have, over time, the possibility of changing how SQL Server behaves at instance level, right? For example, the max degree of parallelism, we can set it at instance level. And we also have the possibility of changing the behavior using query hint, right? On a particular statement, you can set, let's say, option max DOP and specify a value, the one that you want. Now, with this database scope configuration, you can also change the behavior of max DOP and many other options that you have it on this link, right, at the database level. Right? So, for example, you can have on the same user on the same SQL instance, multiple databases, and one of them set to run max DOP 2, and another one to run with max DOP 8, right? And you can also change different behavior, like, for example, which beside the compatibility level, of course, which cardinal estimator version you're going to be using, if you're going to be using the legacy, the new one, etc., etc. So there is a huge list of database scope configuration that you can specify at database level. We're going to see some of them later. Then in terms of, hardware choices, right? We have this persistent memory devices on modern hardware that basically give us the possibility of having a lot of storage in terms of size, right? But with the speed of a memory, right? An internal memory. And SQL Server 2016 onwards is start taking advantage of this technology. So we can, let's say, place the data and the log file as well as the hybrid buffer pool on these devices. So we do have extremely high performance in terms of the access to those data files. Okay, this is the point that I mentioned earlier about the TempDB. And basically, this is, remembering SQL Server 14, Microsoft has introduced this option of in-memory technology, right, for certain type of tables. With the TempDB, we all know that is a precious resource that we have only one per server and everything goes there. For certain cases, we have to do troubleshooting to, avoid different kind of latches, etc. And there are several techniques, like, for example, split the data files into multiple files depending on the amount of cores, etc., etc., etc. But even though we still have contention on TempDB. So with SQL Server 2019, with this feature, right, we can use this in-memory technology for certain type of metadata within TempDB. And we're going to see that we can get, better execution because we won't have contention on the TempDB for certain cases. We're going to see it in a minute. Another thing that I love a lot, actually, is all the enhancement in the setup process, right? Especially for those DBAs that are new, right? We know that, setting up or installing a SQL Server is easy, right? Just a few next, finish. But then, in the past, you used to have to do a bunch of things as a post-installation process, right? Adjusting TempDB, memory, max DOP, etc., etc., etc. So in SQL Server 2016, Microsoft gave us the possibility for the first time to set up the TempDB configuration through the setup process. So we can specify to which drive, the amount of files, the auto-grow values, etc., etc., etc. In 2017, they made some adjustment for the TempDB. But in SQL Server 2019, they give us the possibility of setting up the max DOP, right, max degree of parallelism for the whole instance, right? We know that the default value is 0. We can have a long conversation of whether this is the right value or not, right? That is for another discussion. But what Microsoft is doing right now is based on the server configuration, the amount of cores, etc., is going to propose a value to set up the max DOP, right? We can either accept that value and set it, or we can, specify the one we want, right? The same applies for the max memory settings, right? We know that the default value is a huge number, so it has to be changed depending on the amount of memory that we have. We cannot use 100% of the memory. We have to use certain percentage, etc. So what the setup process does right now is based on the total amount of memory detected on the server, is going to come up with a proposal to say, hey, you should set up this value. You can either accept it or use another value if you want, right? But now you have this possibility of doing this through the setup process. In terms of security, right, there are these options regarding to securing claims. This is another way to encrypt the databases and the communication through the whole process, from the connection string, the client, to the database, right? There are also tools to do data classification and auditing, right, just to handle and manipulate sensitive data. And with that, let's jump to the demo. Let me go to the demo real quick. So let's start covering some of the features that we've been discussing lately. So remember this, what we said, the lightweight query profiling, right? What I'm going to do here is I will execute this query and will specify here, right, this button, which is the lightweight, live query statistics, right? So when we run this, come on. One second, it just, this is a VM, a virtual machine. So I'm trying to reconnect. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I have specified here, as I said, include live query statistics, right? So I'm going to execute this. And we will see that down here, now we have this, right? Estimated query progress, right? So we know at which point of the execution we are at. So let's cancel this one. Let's run this one. And you will see dynamically, right, how these values are changing. So we know exactly the point of the execution. So again, with this is estimated, of course, but we see the execution plan live with the statistic, and also now we have this possibility of getting the estimated query progress. You can tell me, this is nice, but you have to run your query through Management Studio to get the execution progress, and the answer is no. Now, we have the possibility of running, the activity monitor, right? This is a tool coming with the SQL Server since many versions back, right? So whatever is running on the SQL Server, we can go to the activity monitor. As usual, we see, CPU usage, wait tasks, and I/O, but we also have here the expensive queries. So I will run an external application here. This is running just with SQL Stress, right? Just running some activity on my SQL Server. So we will see that eventually it's gonna populate some data here, right? So what we will be able to do is, we do right click, and from here we can see now show live execution plan. So when we hit this, even if it is not running directly from Management Studio, right, we get the estimated query progress. And with that, remember that example that I gave earlier, right? We can, identify if the query just started or it is about to finish. So that is lightweight query profiling. Let me cancel my workload for now. Okay, so let's go to see these features regarding to intelligent query processing, right? And this is, for example, the one that I mentioned regarding to memory grants, right? So for this demo, I'm going to specify the option of include actual execution plan, right? I'm going to, change the compatibility level and clean the procedure cache. And what I will do here is basically create this procedure, right? That's basically is going through several tables and doing some sort of showings. And, it's not important what it does right now, but what I want you to see is I have created the procedure. Now, I will execute it with this parameter 8, right? And remember, we have the include actual execution plan. So when we execute it, right, it come up with no rows, right? And when we go to the execution plan, we see this little warning sign saying, hey, the query memory grant detected is excessive, right? You are requesting this amount, and in fact, is using almost nothing. And this is the example that I mentioned earlier. So let's see what happened if I run it with a different parameter, with 9, right? So pay attention here that now it's going to return data, right? It's taking, several seconds. It's going to take between 9 and 12 seconds to return all the data that I want, right? So now it's returned several thousand rows, right? And if we go to the execution plan, note that we have several warnings here, here, and here. And if we check the meaning of those, we say, hey, here you have the excessive memory. Here you are spilling up to TempDB, and here also you are using TempDB. But since we have the database in the latest compatibility level, right? Notice what it happened when I run it for the next time. Remember, it took 14 seconds. I'm not going to do any code change, anything, and I will just execute it one more time, right? Instead of 14 seconds, it took 2 seconds, right? It returned the same amount of rows, of course. If I go to the execution plan, notice that all those warning that we had from the previous execution, they disappear, right? They're gone. And this is because intelligent query processing just adapted the granted memory to use the correct value, right? So you saw from 14 seconds back to 2 seconds without any code change. This is really, really impressive. Let's close this guy. Then we go to this one that, for the scalar tables, right? We're going to do the same. Let's set up the compatibility level. Let's clean the procedure cache. Let's specify, to show the actual execution plan. And basically what we're going to do here in this example is we're going to create this function that we're going to provide a customer ID, and depending on the amount of, let's say, a point or miles, etc., it's going to return if it is a regular, gold, or platinum category, right? So, we're going to compile this. We're going to check that this is a function, and this is important, right? The function has to be an inline type, right? So that is why it's not for all the scalar function, it's just for a set of them. Remember, this is probably B1, so in the future, they're going to address more cases, of course. So see what happened here. So instead of changing the compatibility level, I'm going to use one hint that is saying, don't use scalar UDF inlining feature, right? This is just disabling that particular feature using a hint, right? And then I will execute the same one without that option, so using the feature. Let's see what the difference is. When we run it for the first time, sorry, I had to come up here. Let me do it again here. So we create the procedure. And we run it. So the first time we run it, it's going to come up with the execution plan. So we can go and check the execution plan, right? It's taking a little bit longer. But what we will notice is that in the execution plan, it's not going to do anything for the scalar function. All this logic is encapsulated in this compute scalar, and you see it's saying that the cost is 0, right? But in reality, it's not like that. It has a huge logic within the function. So if we use the second option, which in fact is using the T-SQL Scala UDF inlining feature, right? What we will see is a big difference in the execution plan, because now we have the plan embedded into the main plan, and we can do better troubleshooting. First of all, it was quicker, right? And now see what we have, right? It's not only the compute scalar, now we have all the information related to the function itself. So again, with 0 code changes, right, we have better performance. What else? Let me show you this one for the adaptive choice, and this is the last one from this IQP option, right? What I'm going to do is here you will see, oh, come on. Again, I will specify to show or include the actual execution plan. Note that when we run this, right, what we will see is in the execution plan, this new operator called adaptive choice, right? That's depending of the weight of each of the branches coming here, is going to use one type of join or the other, right? This is also new. Okay, in terms of the TempDB enhancements, as I said, I would like to go through this TempDB metadata optimize option. This is really good. This is a feature that you have to enable at instance level. So in order to enable it, you have to basically enable it and restart the instance, right? So, and you have this value to check whether it is enabled or not. Right now, it's not enabled, right? So what I will do here is I will come up with this store procedure, which, as you see here, is creating this temporary table, right? Inserting a bunch of rows here, right? Then selecting, and when it exits, is dropping the function, and then using it here. So what I will do is I will call that store procedure multiple times from an external file, right? So when we go here and we check what the SQL Server is doing right now, right, we see down here that the server is quite busy. There are like 97 sessions, but most of them are locked, right? We have this second result set, and it's locked with this wait type, this wait type page latch execution. And as you see here, is just trying to create the temporary tables, right? And we run it again, and this is actually still running. And probably it's going to take like a minute or so to complete all the execution that we have in this external batch, right? So there are many blocks here. You see, and the first result is showing you all the activity on the server. The second one, all the blocks involved, and there are a lot of them. So we can keep running and running, and definitely there are several blocks. This takes like 1 minute or something like that. So what we're going to do in the meantime is basically change this value, right? Alter server configuration, set memory optimized TempDB metadata on, right? So we're going to execute it, right? With this, we change, right, the setting. But if we check again, right, we still see this at 0, so it's not enabled. In order to apply this setting, what we need to do is restart the SQL Server instance. You see, this one is still running, so I'm going to cancel it here. So now everything is gone. So I'm going to restart my instance. In the meantime, Caio, if you can tell me 2 things, if we are good with the time and if there are questions.
Yeah, we have some questions. One is from Master Zen. I don't know if this is his or her actual name, but do you know if there is free community edition is still carried on SQL Server 2019?
Let's see if I understood the question. There is one edition of SQL Server, which is actually developer edition, which is totally free. And you have all the features that you have in enterprise editions, which are the features that I'm presenting today. Some of them, or most of them, are enterprise edition features, right? But in order to develop and try this, you can use developer edition for free.
Yeah, for free. There is another question. I guess this one was while you were introducing some features, and it was a question like, what are the new top 3 features that you can point it out? And then after he said like, oh, even 2 top, was George. I don't know if he was here watching us.
Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of features, right? My favorite features are all the ones related to performance, right? Definitely, me as a DBA, I've been doing this for many years, and for example, this is a great feature, the TempDB metadata. IQP is also an extremely good feature, and then the one that I will show later called accelerated database recovery is also a great one.
Well, if someone is watching us, you can share any questions. So far, we have like these 2 questions, but we still have more time to answer more. So there is a delay between what you are watching right now and the things that we are actually doing. So whenever you see this, please leave a comment so we can answer you in the future or in the past, something like that. So I'm sure putting your screen back. We're good to go.
Good.
Let me know if anything.
All right. So we still have some time, right?
Yeah, we have it.
Okay. So now I run this, and now the feature is enabled, right? And what I'm going to do here is run exactly the same batch file. That means 0 code change, right? So I'm running this again, right? I will check the SQL Server activity right now. And what we will see here is that we have all the activity, but we have 0 blocks. Right? So now we don't have these waits or latches while the different processes are trying to create the tables in TempDB. That doesn't mean that the data will go to memory, right? basically what that means is that the metadata, the table structure, is now stored in this in-memory technology, not on the TempDB itself. And with that, we can accomplish much better time because there are no blocks. So now the different sessions don't have to wait one with the other and fight, right, to finish, right? Because they can go all in parallel because there are no latches, right? And if we wait for a few seconds, you will see that, remember the previous time I have to cancel the execution, but this one takes probably half of the time that the other one takes, because there is not waiting from one session to the other. So definitely this is a good option, a good feature, right? If we now I will present a few more features in the slide, and then we will come back to the slide. So, okay, let's talk about the mission critical availability related feature, right? There are some of them. This option of doing resumable online index maintenance. In SQL Server 2017, Microsoft introduced the possibility of doing resumable online index rebuild. What does it mean? Basically, you can, as DBA, one of the maintenance tasks that you have to do is maintain your indexes and remove fragmentation. And to do that, you have to do index rebuild, right? This is a tedious, long-running, crazy task that, in the past we had to do during the weekends and, risky, etc., etc. Now with this option, we have the possibility of starting the resumable online index rebuild operation. This is totally online. And you can see the progress of the index rebuild process. And let's say that you are running out of the maintenance window, right? And, in the past, you just had to cancel the whole thing and start over maybe the following weekend. Here, you can pause the operation and resume it at any time, right? This is huge. This is absolutely huge, right? That was SQL Server 2017. In 2019, at the top of that, Microsoft added the possibility not only for the index rebuild operation, but also for the index create operation, doing it an online resumable way, right? So this is really good. And then this feature called accelerated database recovery. So this is basically a feature, right? Let's put it here. For example, let's say that you have a long-running transaction, a couple of hours, or maybe more, and for some reason the server crash or the transaction abort or something like that. What happens normally? SQL Server has to do the whole rollback operation, right, in order to maintain the consistency. And the rule is that, let's say, if you were running the transaction for, let's say, 2 hours, you may need to wait another 2 hours to complete the rollback, plus or minus, right? And that was if you were lucky, right? Because there were some cases in where the whole user database enters in recovery mode. So for 2 hours, you don't have the possibility of touching that particular database because it's doing the rollback internally. So with this feature, accelerated database recovery, Microsoft has rewritten the whole process of writing to the change log, to the transaction log, and do the checkpoints more aggressively, right? What does it mean is that now, if for some reason this transaction had to do the rollback, right, it doesn't have to wait 2 hours, right? It's gonna do the rollback immediately. And with that, you have better availability, right? So this is definitely a good thing, and we're gonna see it in action. So then here is a summary of the indexing operation with the resumable online options, all the new benefits in availability group with up to 5 synchronous replicas, clusterless availability group, right? So now you don't depend on Windows cluster to set up an availability group, right? You can use certain certificate, and also you can combine the clustering or the availability group, actually not the clustering, and combine different platform, Windows and Linux. So in terms of developer experience, as we said, the whole stack related to security. And let's switch back for 1 minute to the virtual machine, right? So this one, of course, has finished, and this demo for the accelerated database recovery actually is a lengthy demo, but I have some screenshots to show you the concept. Basically, I will explain what I'm trying to do here. I create 2 brand new databases with the same properties, right? DB01 and DB ADR, Accelerated Database Recovery. And only for DB ADR, I enable the feature Accelerated Database Recovery. This is per user database, right? So then, we have 2 sessions, right? We can open 2 sessions in SQL Server and make them start exactly at the same time and do an insert in one new table, one under DB01 and the other one under DB ADR. Right? So they start at the same time and they can run, let's say, for hours. Right? Then, we in a different session we come with this. And after 1.5 minutes, we shut down the instance. Of course, this is something that we don't have to run in production. This is a lab machine. So let me show you what the end result is. Right? I'm not going to run this because I noticed in the past that with 1 minute and a half, you don't see much, right? So let me. This Summit is not behaving very well today, I guess. Oh, here we go. So I have a picture here with the ADR output. So let me explain a little bit what we have. After certain time of running the insert statement to both databases at the same time, and we shut down the server, right? Then when we try to restart the server, right, we also need to do the rollback, right? And you will see that immediately the DB ADR come online, while the one called DB01 stays in recovery for more time, right? And when we try to dig deeper on the SQL error log, right, we see that for DB ADR, right, the rollback operation took 7 seconds. So in 7 seconds, the database was back online, right? And for DB01, the one without accelerated database recovery, it took 99 seconds to come back online, right? There's a huge difference. Another behavior that you can see here, which is actually really good, is that if we check the transaction log size of each of the databases at the end of the rollback process, you see that the one without ADR is much, much bigger than the one with ADR enabled, right? So your question could be why we don't have this enabled for all the databases by default. And actually, that was my question to the product group in Microsoft, right? And, they tried to come up with a compatibility level with the previous SQL Server versions, et cetera, et cetera. So that is why it's disabled by default. But if you go to Azure SQL, right, you will see this option enabled by default. So what else? The last thing I want to show you, and actually this is something that is well, first of all, let me go through this. I promised this earlier, so I'm delivering here. The different set of database scope configuration. I mentioned max DOP, right? So per database, right, we can set up parameter sniffing. We can specify to use the legacy cardinal estimator, etc., per user database. This is really, really good. And finally, this big feature, so some of you have seen this tedious error message saying a string has been truncated, right? So let's say that, let's put this in a different compatibility level, and we show you what I was talking about. So, when you're trying to do an insert on a database that is, has a table with a column, let's say defined with a varchar 10, and you are trying to insert a value that is longer than that, you used to get something like this. Let me come up here. Let me we create the database. And then I will create the table. When we try to do the insert, the error message is this one. We all have seen this error message. A string or binary data will be truncated. If we have a server that is extremely busy with several sessions, we don't know what this means, right? From which table, which session, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in SQL Server 2019, so the only thing we have to do is just change the compatibility level to 150, right? What we can have is this error message, right? So a string or binary data will be truncated, and it's tell you which table, which column, right? And which value is the one that is truncated, right? So definitely better to do troubleshooting. Again, this is available by default in SQL Server 2019. And you can enable it with a trade flag in SQL Server 2016 and 17. And with that, I also only have to mention that, now we have this new tool called Azure Data Studio, right, which is the cousin of SQL Server Management Studio. The big differentiator is that it's multi-platform. It can run on SQL, Linux, and Mac, right? Here I'm also providing links to learn more about SQL Server 2019. Remember or remind everyone that SQL Server 2008 and 2008 R2 support has ended, right, last year. So it's time to get out of this, right, and move to a modern platform, hopefully 2019. Here is one of my quotes. for one of the Microsoft events, mentioning all the features for the person who asked me for the my favorite feature. Right here, I'm mentioning optimized TempDB, intelligent query processing, etc., etc. And with that, I'm finishing my presentation. Thank you, everyone, for attend. And we still have some time for questions, I guess.
That was a really interesting quote. Thank you. Gracias. Am I pronouncing it right?
Gracias. Yes, absolutely.
You know what is funny? Like many people around the world think that we speak Spanish, but we don't speak like Brazilians. We don't speak Spanish.
Yeah, well, I this from different part of the world. I've been through. You say Buenos Aires, and they say it's in Brazil. So yes, we are all South Americans.
Yeah, we're really diverse. Like. Continent, many different people, many different accents.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Brazil, my Portuguese accent is really unique from where I'm from. So whenever I'm traveling around, people are just like, "Oh, you're from that place," and then I'm just like, "Yeah, I guess I am. Thanks," because I love my accent.
Yeah.
So I would like to invite everybody to leave a question or to share a question or a comment about the presentation. Before we finish or we start to answer all the questions, I would like to invite everybody to join our global community of reactors. We have 14 different reactors around the world. So maybe you have one near to your state or to your country. I don't know where you are watching us right now, but you can scan this code or just look for Meetup Microsoft Reactor. You're going to find many different locations. Before we start the Q&A, I would just like to invite you to answer our survey. Since we would like to improve our events, I leave a comment with the link. So you just click on the link. And the very first question is about the code for this event. The code is 10015 or 115 or 10,015. So you can say that in different ways. But yeah, so we have, I mean, right now at this moment, we only have one question, which is regarding, it's from Master Zen. This person asked, like, now that SQL is available on all three platforms, is the code developed on one platform perfectly compatible on all the three operation systems, OSs?
Yes. For example, if you develop something in SQL Server, let's say under Windows, right? You can take a backup of that database and restore it to the same SQL Server version on Linux, on Docker's containers, and even in Azure SQL Database Managed Instance. Right. So between Windows and Docker, which is actually Linux, Windows, Linux, and Docker, you can do exactly the same. With Azure SQL Managed Instance is exactly the same code. There are just few features that are not available in Azure SQL Database, in Managed Instance, sorry. So the answer is yes, not 100%, right? But if you want to switch from Windows to Linux or the other way around, the compatibility is 100%.
Well, it seems to me that you're really excited with the improvements with like over the years. It's getting better and better. What do you think that is coming next for you?
Well,
for me,
that is
you're
that
so
is a
excited
good
with
question, actually, because SQL Server is a really mature platform, right? It has several years in the market, and every new major version that we see around, we say, what else, right? It's, just tables, relationships, indexes. But let me tell you, and even for ourselves that we have early access to the code, right? We are impressed of the ton of features that are coming on every single SQL Server, right? For example, in 2017, this whole Linux thing, right? SQL Server running on Linux, I never thought that I'm gonna see that in my whole life, right? But in fact, it's happening. Right? Now, the possibility of using different languages like R, Java, or Python in SQL, again, that's another huge thing. And, the promise is that they're going to keep evolving, right? So, yeah, I'm also, waiting what's going to be next. Definitely, I'm positive that I'm going to be surprised as well.
I have one question. This is kind of like when you started, you said that you're working with SQL since one of the very first versions, and today, that was basically your very first slide, which shows the evolution. So I asked you like, what's next? But let's look back a little bit. Like, is it really different from you? Like for you as a developer, like to get to know more about this platform today, and to just start, like, because like I used to be like a developer. Like, it has been a while that I don't write code, but 5 years ago, when I started to the last thing that I play around with was with D3.js, which is a framework for SVG, and you develop JS. And back then, I didn't have that much documentations and things like that. Today, I have plenty books, plenty videos, people talking about the framework and things like that. How is the market different from you? Like for you, especially like now you have right, that share lots of content. Is it different today than you used to be?
Well, in terms of the product itself, it is a relational database engine. So it's all about tables, columns, data types, and relationships, right? So the core is that. The good thing is that all the things that you have at the top of that to handle high availability, disaster recovery, performance, security, etc., right? Different languages to handle, but everything is at the top of what you already have, right? Microsoft has changed this approach of deprecating features, right? And now what they say is that the new approach is discontinuing feature. That means that the feature are going to still be there, right? With zero, let's say, investment, right? But it's going to be there, right? They're not going to remove it from the product, right? And in terms of documentation, well, the Microsoft Learn site, the Microsoft Docs, this is the source of learning. For example, a few days back, there was a training on Azure SQL, just from zero to expert, right? Like, 5 full days for free from the engineering team live in YouTube. So, in terms of sources to get trained and to learn, I believe that Microsoft is giving us everything these days.
Yeah, and also we have folks like you, like MVPs, and people sharing the content and help the community grow and learn more about new technology. You have been MVP for a while, right?
Since 2016.
Yeah, well, it's a while, like 4 years. How does it feel like to be an MVP, to help others? Is it a good thing to be part of it? Would like to invite
Well,
others. Also try to give.
absolutely. So being part of a global community is huge, right? In PASS, the community that I'm member from several years ago, 2008, I guess. The let's say the main phrase is connect, learn, and share, right? And this is what we're trying to do all the time, right? With this kind of events, engage with different people around the globe, trying to share some experience and knowledge, and encourage the people to go to this side and present what they are, what they know, or what they would like to share to the rest.
Well, it's really nice when you do that, and I love it. It's really great to get to know people that likes to do that, and also to help others too. Well, we don't have any more questions. We didn't receive any, so I guess we are going to start to finish our event here. Is that okay?
Yes. Well, thank you, Caio, for this opportunity to share with the Reactor community. It's a pleasure to me. And well, hopefully we can arrange to do another event like this in the near future.
We will do, I'm sure of that. So before we finish, again, I would like to invite you to answer or to fill our survey. Your opinion is really important for us to improve our events. So if possible, would be great if you can just take 1 minute or two just to share your opinion about this event. And I guess this is it for today. Thank you again, everybody who watched this live event. Thank you, Javier, for being here with us and to wanted to send a message to us like, hey, we'd like to be part of that. And I'm really grateful for that too. So I welcome everybody to join our meetups, to follow our Twitter, or even to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would be great.
I think I lost you.
No, you're here. So I guess this is it for today. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.